True, I am 79 years old. I am telling this now because my closest friend of 60 years is gone, and it took losing him for me to finally understand the part I played in that loss. My name is Thomas Hale. I have said that name out loud my whole life, but it sounds different when you are this old. It sounds like something nearly finished. I am not telling this because I need forgiveness. He is not here to give it, and I am not sure I deserve it anyway. I am telling it because time has become very narrow for me, and silence feels heavier than honesty now. Most mornings I wake up before the sun. My body does that whether I want it to or not. I sit at the small kitchen table with a cup of coffee I barely taste. The chair across from me stays empty. I still look at it sometimes, without thinking, the way you do after decades of habit. That is where he used to sit when he came by. He always came early. He said the day made more sense before it got crowded. His name was Walter Green. We met when we were 19. That feels impossible to say. 19 is so far away, it barely feels like it belonged to me. We met in the fall of 1965 at a bus station that smelled like oil and wet concrete. We were both headed to different places, neither of which we ended up staying in. I was quieter. I listened more than I spoke. That balance stayed with us for 60 years. We were not the kind of friends who talked about feelings. We talked about work and families and things that needed fixing. We talked about the news, about money, about the weather. We sat in the same rooms without talking at all, and that counted as something. When you are young, you believe friendship is automatic. You think it runs on its own fuel. You think showing up once in a while is enough, and it usually is. At least, it feels that way. Walter and I grew up. We married, we had children, we moved houses, we buried parents, we changed jobs. We kept meeting for coffee, then for lunch, then sometimes just for a nod in the driveway if time was short. Time was always short. I worked in accounting for most of my life. It was steady, it paid the bills. It gave me something to point to when people asked what I did. Walter worked with his hands, carpentry at first, then maintenance for the city. He smelled like sawdust and oil. He said it made him feel useful. I admired that about him. I never said it out loud. In our 30s, we saw each other every week. Our kids played together. Our wives talked in the kitchen while we stood outside pretending to fix things that did not need fixing. Those years felt solid. I assumed they would stretch on. In our 40s, it became every other week. There were schedules, there were deadlines, there were promotions to chase and repairs to pay for. When one of us canceled, the other understood. That understanding felt like loyalty. In our 50s, we started missing birthdays, then anniversaries. We still called, we still meant to visit, we still said soon. Soon is a word that hides a lot. I never thought I was doing anything wrong. That is the hardest part to admit. I believed I was being responsible. I believed I was doing what needed to be done. Work came first because work paid for everything else. Family came first because that was what a good man did. Friendship sat quietly in the background, patient and assumed. Walter never complained. He never said I was slipping away. He joked about me being busy. He said accountants aged faster than carpenters because numbers did not forgive mistakes. I laughed. I always laughed. There were signs. I see them clearly now. He would call and leave messages instead of waiting for me to answer. He would suggest dates weeks in advance. He would ask, carefully, if I was free this time. I told myself he understood. I told myself he knew I cared. I told myself we had time. When I turned 60, we went out for dinner. Just the two of us. Our wives insisted. Walter raised a glass and said he hoped we would still be doing this at 80. I said we would, without hesitation. It felt true when I said it. After that, things thinned out more. Retirement was supposed to open space. Instead, it filled with other things. Doctor appointments, helping the kids, small projects that felt important because they filled the day. Walter retired later than I did. He called me one afternoon and said he had time now. He said it like a question. I told him I was glad. I told him we would get together more. I meant it, but habits are stubborn. Weeks went by, then months. When we met, it felt slightly awkward at first, like we had to warm back up. That discomfort made it easier to keep things short. I did not want to admit that. He started walking slower. His hands shook sometimes. He joked about it. I joked too. Neither of us wanted to sit with it. When his wife died, I went to the funeral. Of course I did. I stood next to him while people spoke words that sounded rehearsed. I put my hand on his shoulder. I told him to call me anytime. He nodded. He thanked me. He did not call. I told myself he needed space. I told myself he had other people. I told myself I would check in soon. Soon became later. The truth is uncomfortable. I did not want to sit with his grief because it would have slowed me down. It would have required something from me that I was not practiced at giving anymore. I had grown efficient. Efficient people do not linger. The calls from him became shorter, less frequent. When we spoke, he sounded tired. Not sad exactly, just worn thin. I noticed and did nothing. When he got sick, it was already advanced. I heard through someone else. That alone should tell you something. I visited him in the hospital once. The room smelled like disinfectant and old air. He looked smaller. His eyes still lit up when he saw me. That is the part that still hurts the most. We talked about the past. We laughed about old mistakes. We avoided the present. We avoided the future completely. I told him I would come back. He said not to worry if I got busy. He knew me too well. I did not go back until the hospice nurse called. She said he had asked for me. By the time I arrived, he was asleep. His breathing was shallow. I sat there for an hour, maybe two. I talked anyway. I told him things I should have said years earlier. I told him he mattered to me. I told him I was glad he was my friend. I do not know if he heard me. He died the next morning. There was no dramatic moment of realization, no collapse, no sudden wisdom, just a quiet understanding that settled in and did not leave. I had not lost him all at once. I had lost him slowly through postponement and assumption, through choosing what felt urgent over what was important, through believing that history could substitute for presence. That is my part. After the funeral, people drifted back to their lives. And I went back to mine, except mine felt hollow in a way I could not explain to anyone without sounding foolish. How do you explain that someone you barely saw at the end was still the center of your life? I started replaying conversations, not the big ones, the small ones. The calls I did not return, the invitations I deflected, the afternoons I chose to stay home because it felt easier. Nothing dramatic, nothing cruel, just absence. Time does not punish loudly, it erodes. I'm not angry at myself in a loud way. I am just honest now. I see that love does not stay alive on intention alone. It needs attention, it needs inconvenience, it needs to be chosen, even when nothing is wrong. I believed our bond was unbreakable because it was old. I did not understand that age makes things more fragile, not less. At 79, your world shrinks whether you agree to it or not. Friends die, bodies fail, days repeat. What remains are the choices you made when you had room to move. I still talk to Walter sometimes, not because I believe he hears me, but because silence feels like another kind of loss. I tell him about the weather, about the neighborhood, about how strange it is to be the one left. If you are listening to this and you still have someone you assume will always be there, I hope you hear me correctly. I am not telling you what to do. I am telling you what I believed and how wrong I was. I believed there would be time later. I believed understanding counted as showing up. I believed that saying soon was the same as saying yes. It is not. There is no fixing this for me. There is no catching up. There is only carrying it. I have learned to live with that weight. Some days it sits lightly. Some days it presses down hard enough to slow my breathing. Both are part of being alive this late. I am grateful for the years we had. I truly am. Gratitude and sorrow are not opposites. They live together now. If this meant something to you, you do not need to do anything grand with it. Just remember that relationships do not disappear because of anger. They disappear because of delay. I have very little time left. I feel that in my bones. When my days end, I hope someone remembers me kindly. I hope they do not wonder why I stopped calling. That is all I have to say.